Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning Five here on March 11th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by Bucknuts columnist Brandon Castel. Brandon, Ohio State has had two spring practices thus far, Tuesday and yesterday. What has stood out to you the most thus far, Brandon?
Well, I mean, I'm not exactly surprised, but I think what stood out to me the most so far is, a lot of talk about the young guys and the young talent on the team. I think we've talked a lot about this. Replacing so many guys and how long is it going to take, to get those next guys ready to go. And, I think you and I have both said it's probably going to take a little bit of time, but I think we're starting to see how much talent is actually on the roster. And, you hear some of the guys talking about these young kids. It's early in camp. You always get a few kids that flash, but, I look at, look at a guy like Urban Meyer talking about Austin Mack and Torrance Gibson and the way that they've shown up for spring ball already. And that's exactly what they're going to need when you lose Michael Thomas and Jalen Marshall and Braxton Miller. And the opportunity is there. But, I think that a lot of the talk about the wide receivers is what jumped out at me originally. Hearing Johnny Dixon looks good and that he's healthy and ready to go. Hearing some of the other young guys on the team, obviously Paris Campbell we know about, and with some of these guys out for the spring, a guy like Curtis Samuel and Noah Brown and Corey Smith, we know that it's going to be on some of these young guys to get that opportunity. So that kind of jumped out at me. Another thing that jumped out at me was kind of the talk of Mike Weber and JT Barrett and the relationship that they've kind of formed there. I think that could be a factor. And then, on the defensive side, I think some of the young guys on the defensive line, I'm going to be really intrigued to see what a guy like Jalen Holmes can do, and really just kind of get a good idea of what this young defensive line is capable of.
We chatted with Greg Schiano yesterday, and he could not be more impressive. I mean, I already liked the hiring a tremendous amount, and I just like it even more after interviewing him yesterday. And, a lot of people are wondering, could the defense be much different this year? I mean, there's going to be tweaks, but I just love the fact that you can get a former NFL head coach and beyond that, a guy that was successful for 10 years at Rutgers, a program that really had no success before he was there. I mean, it's very exciting to see Greg Schiano kind of taking over this defense. And I will give Ohio State credit. They're not messing around with the titles anymore. I mean, Luke Fickell does still have the title of defensive coordinator, Brandon, but if you get on the official site and you look at Greg Schiano's title, what is it? It's associate head coach and defensive coordinator. It's not co-defensive coordinator. And I just think it's exciting. Luke Fickell does not have an ego. He's a good man. He's a good coach. But Greg Schiano is in charge of this defense, in my opinion. I think that's a great situation for Ohio State.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, I think you hit the nail on the head that a lot of people are going to point to the fact he's an NFL head coach, and that automatically carries a lot of weight with these players. But I think even more than that, even going back further, he was the defensive coordinator on some really good Miami teams, and then obviously took over Rutgers program that had very little success throughout its history and certainly in recent history. Did a tremendous job building that program. Not a perfect coach. I think people are familiar with his shortcomings in what happened in the NFL and why he wasn't able to really have success. But I think it's a great fit, obviously, for a guy to come and work as an assistant in college after being the head coach at a program like Rutgers and the head coach in the NFL for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know that he's setting his ego aside, at least a little bit, enough to be on this staff, be a part of the team. So I think it's going to be a good fit. I think obviously there will be some growing pains anytime you make a big change like that, moving away from Chris Ash, who had so much success the last couple of years as the defensive coordinator. But like you said, I'm excited. And I'm really excited because it's a lot of young guys. That if he was coming in and trying to take over a defense that had really dominated with the Joey Bosa's and Darren Lee's and Von Bell's and Eli Apples, that'd be one thing. But I'm excited to see him kind of build this defense over the next year or two, see what they can become under Schiano.
That's a great point. I mean, he's the new defensive coordinator. He's taking over really a new defense with 8 new starters and plus guys coming in like Nick Bosa, who Urban Meyer says will play right away. Jonathan Cooper, who's already enrolled, who Urban Meyer says will play right away. Jordan Fuller, we could go on and on, but very good point, Brandon, that this is a kind of a fresh defense. It's a fresh new defensive coordinator. It's going to be fun to see what Greg Schiano can do with this group this year. Switching gears to basketball real quick, Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament last night beat Penn State 79-75 in the second round. 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists for Jaquan Lyle. Also had 3 steals. I mean, this guy, when he's on, he looks like an NBA player. I think there's no doubt he needs to come back for next year. People keep asking me, could he leave after this year? Yeah, he possibly could. He could be like a Quentin Ross that leaves when he shouldn't leave. But I think that Thad Matta will be able to sell Jaquan Lyle and coming back next year and working his way into being a first-round pick. I want you to talk about that a little bit. And furthermore, the Buckeyes are going to play Michigan State later today in the quarterfinals. Talk about Jaquan Lyle and talk about what chance you give Ohio State of beating Michigan State later today.
Yeah, so with Jaquan Lyle, I agree 100%. I think he looked tremendous tonight. And like you said, when he is on, he looks like a tremendous player. He's got that natural ability with the ball in his hands. He's got that natural ability to score, to set his teammates up, to get rebounds, steals. I mean, he can kind of do everything, and that's really what you want in that kind of guard. But how many times have we seen him really on like that throughout the course of the season? I would say, as you go back and look through, Ohio State's season, it hasn't been a consistent thing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he won't make the jump to the NBA, because the NBA is a league that very much drafts on potential. And so there are guys who really haven't shown enough, done enough. There's really no reason to think they're NBA ready at the college level, but they've heard enough buzz in their ear that they can be drafted on their potential alone. So, you never know, and obviously there's some cases where you can see it didn't work out with a guy like Quentin Ross. Now, that's not to say he's not having success in other leagues, but, didn't have the success he had hoped for in the National Basketball Association. And I personally don't feel like Jaquan Lyle is ready to make that jump. I think a lot of fans will say that about a lot of players, if they have to refine certain parts of their game. Obviously, D'Angelo Russell was a guy a year ago who was completely ready to make that jump. I don't see that type of player or anywhere near that type of player, Jaquan Lyle. But I do see a kid with a lot of potential for next season, if he does come back, to become one of the better guards in college basketball. And I think that's when he can really establish himself as a potential NBA first-round draft pick. So to me, that would be the right choice, but I never know what these kids are going to do. I'm sure Thad's, in his ear telling them the right thing to do, because Thad's always been open with these kids. If they're ready to go, he'll tell them. If they're not, he usually will be the one to tell them. Doesn't always mean that they'll stay. But as far as Michigan State, it's hard for me to. I know that this is the big game. They're playing for everything. Michigan State certainly doesn't have as much on the line in this game, but the Spartans are red hot. They waxed Ohio State in both of their meetings during the regular season. Now the Thad's teams have historically played well in the tournament. They've historically matched up well with pretty much anyone from the conference, regardless of how good the rest of the conference was. So nothing would surprise me once Thad Matta's teams get in the Big Ten tournament. They have, I think they've reached the final 7 out of 11 years. So, he's done a tremendous job of getting them ready for tournament play. I just don't see them going out and beating this Michigan State team. They're on a different level than Ohio State. But, if they're going to get another 22-10 game from Jaquan Lyle, and if they're going to get 24 points again from Mark Loving, that's the recipe that could pull the upset.
Hey, they won their 20th game. They keep the 20-game win streak alive for Thad Matta's tenure. I mean, and not just during his time at Ohio State, but his 1 year at Butler, his 3 years at Xavier. Now, 11 years at Ohio State. He's won 20 games or more each year. So credit to Thad Matta on that. And actually 12 years, not just 11 years, 12 years in a row now at Ohio State. So NIT madness is now coming to Columbus. Get ready for some NIT Buckeye fans, unless they can pull the upset later today. We'll see. Switching gears back to football, Pro Day later today at Ohio State. In fact, as soon as I get the show posted, I'll be heading on over to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Pro Day will run from 9:30 a.m. till roughly noon. All 32 NFL teams will be in attendance, and over 125 NFL personnel will be there. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be fun. It's going to be chaotic, but it's just going to be a lot of fun being over there. Brandon, who are some guys that can really help themselves today from an Ohio State standpoint, guys that maybe didn't do so well at the combine that really need to help themselves today at pro day?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think, like you said, this is probably one of the most exciting pro days we've ever seen. I mean, you and I have covered the team for a long time. We've been around a lot of different programs and seen a lot of different big-time pro days. This has got to rival some of the Alabama pro days that they've had. You've got NFL Network and ESPN are both broadcasting live from Columbus. So, I mean, this is about as hyped as an event as you can get, and that's really what Urban Meyer tried to create. He talked about when they did some of these ESPN specials being the flavor of the month, creating a program that people want to be a part of. Certainly he has done that, and I think it can only help the program to have this kind of attention on a pro day. That's what these kids are all about. So first and foremost, I think it's kudos to Urban Meyer and the job that him and his staff have done to create this type of atmosphere. In terms of kids that can help themselves a lot, I think obviously Jalen Marshall's the big one, that didn't really perform to what maybe some thought he might at the combine. We'll see. A kid's obviously a very athletic kid. He's got a lot of talent. I thought he was a year away from being a legit NFL prospect, but, I get it. I understand wanting to make that decision and that move. So he's a kid that could perform well. He's got to be able to show that he can move well. I mean, that's because he's undersized. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He's a former quarterback. So I think he's got to show that he can move well and be an impact kind of slot guy in the NFL, or be a guy that can bring you down the field, and he's got to show off some speed. So for starters, he's a guy that can help himself. I think Braxton did enough to help himself already. I think some of those guys just really need to continue to show what they've already done. Michael Thomas, is a guy who showed well. I think he could show a little better, even if he can improve on his 40 time. If he decides to go through and run the 40, I think he's a guy who could improve his time a little bit. A guy like Von Bell, I think he can continue to impress if he can show off a little more athleticism and show what he can do a little bit. But I think look at a kid like Joey Bosa. It's hard for me to think that he's really got much to prove. He didn't have a great combine. He didn't wow everybody with his physical, running and some of the drills that he did. But we all know what Joey Bosa's about, and I don't think he has anything to prove. Same with a guy like Taylor Decker. So really, I think it comes down to some of those other guys being able to go out and show that they're as quick and fast and have that ability to make plays, at the next level.
Thanks to all the listeners for tuning into the show. Hope everybody has a great day and a great weekend. And thank you very much to Brandon Castel. You can catch his column every week on Bucknuts, Inside the Brain at BCast. Brandon, thank you very much for your time and your insights, sir.
Absolutely. Anytime, Dave. Thanks.